On the Tom Kelly Show, we have author and legendary CBS weatherman Mark McEwen. He was at the show I just did in Orlando. He was actually, even though he wasn't there and had no idea who I would be for another 24 years, was in my first major moment in stand-up comedy. And you know what? If that's not a tease for something, I don't know what is. So let's just start the show. And then there's music. There'll be like graphics playing. Here we go. I always judge the guest on if they dance or bob their head. And there we go. And here we go. Content warning. Spoiler alert. Get yourself on a plane to Orlando. You are experiencing the Tom Kelly Show. An inside joke for Mr. McEwen and three other friends. This show is going worldwide. It's going worldwide. So on today's show is a name that I think many people who experience my show will remember. Mark McEwen. He was a legendary New York area and then network weather guy on what I would call Channel 2 or CBS. So I guess that's WCBS and CBS. And listen, and I'm going to sound racist here. I think that, yeah, I do. It sounds racist. It's repeating this old joke. But back in the 90s, there were three morning shows, and all three morning shows had African-American weathermen. And there was Al Roker, might have been soft and balding on Channel 4 on NBC. And then the joke was that CBS wanted to be, they booked Mark McEwen, and they booked another slightly heavier black guy. And
hold on. I was there first.
You were there first.
Al Roker. And okay. I wasn't a local weatherman. My first job in TV was national.
But you went straight to CBS. Okay, put that in your pocket. So my joke was, at the time, it was sort of the joke was Al Roker was sort of a ripoff of Mark McEwen. And my first big show doing stand-up was with Al Roker. I was an NBC Page. It was an NBC Talent Show. And Al Roker is the most gracious man on earth, next to you, Mark. But here's what happens. I am now tanking in front of the crowd of people at this NBC Talent Show. And Al was heckling me in a very warm way. I think I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I'm tanking Mr. Roker. And I told my father I was going to be here. And I had a joke about my dad that we probably need a setup for to make this a little funnier. And then Al Roker goes, what did your father say, Jack? Because I was talking about my dad's Irish accent when he gets mad. And then I said, my father said, you better not fuck with Roker, Jack. And then everybody starts laughing that I said fucking stuff in front of Al Roker. And then I looked at Al Roker and I said, I basically came here with a bunch of Mark McEwen jokes I wanted to tell, but I won't.
Great.
And anyway, I'll argue that was my first crucial laugh. That might have been my first rebound after tanking. And whatever it is, your name has just been in part of my story. And then again, this podcast is, by the way, you're experiencing the Tom Kelly Show podcast where one comedian who used to work at shows like Good Morning America, The View, and other big things, whose career sort of derailed by the pandemic, I'm getting back to the fun. And part of my getting back to the fun mission was Bonkerz Comedy Club. I'm talking to them, trying to get road bookings and whatnot. They're in Orlando and a bunch of other major cities. And the guy said, well, Tom, I don't have any bookings available for you for the next couple of months, but I have this show with Mark McEwen. And I go, Mark McEwen?
He said that?
Yeah, and I did. I told the story I just told. And honestly, I had a great adventure of a weekend. My appearance on the show came out well. I got the 7-minute tape I needed. It appears on a network on your Amazon Roku Fire Stick on DBTV. I would tell you how to watch, but it would just be easier to put together IKEA furniture. And yeah, and there you go. But I'll be honest, it was if you were there, and I'll say maybe, hopefully, you're part of my second rising, if you will, Mark McEwen. And then we were talking before the show, and God darn it, you're even more interesting than I remember, because the whole moment I'm like, why is the weatherman doing a comedy show in Orlando? And I guess, should we start there? I guess here's the question. When you have a conversation in a podcast with this, you've written a book on surviving a stroke, blah, blah, blah. Now that's the end. But I really love your middle and beginning, which is you transitioned from stand-up comedian to important guy on a news show.
Well, Tom, I'm going to backtrack.
There's so much to say.
I used to be a rock and roll DJ on the radio, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, and that brought me to New York. I worked at WNEW-FM.
The legendary station, legendary rock station.
I'm a lucky so-and-so. I'm sitting there and there's Scott Muni. Give me a break. He called me Fats, and I thought, I need to lose some weight. Now, Tom, he called everyone Fats.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
How long did you have this legendary DJ calling you Fats until you realized everybody was Fats? I mean, it had to last at least a week.
I would say I was there for almost 2 years. And it took me a while to figure out that he wasn't saying, you're fat. He just like, buddy and, bro. He called everyone fats. So I got fired twice in New York. Radio lends itself to you getting fired. That's part of the whole deal. I got fired at APP, went over to NEW, got fired there. What I did, Tom, the station, NEW, called me and said a guy from CBS called, so I'm giving you his number. I thought he was from WCBS.
The oldie station at the time.
Right. I didn't want to play oldies, but I didn't have a job. So now we're talking, he could have been nicer. And he said, I'm thinking, if you're in radio and you have one producer, that's a big deal. There's a number of producers. And then, Tom, he said the thing that changed the whole thing. And since we're going up against GMA, the Today Show, I say, hold on. Is this weather? Is this TV? He says, yeah. Interested? Yeah. So I go down to Black Rock, and this is where my stand-up came into play. I'm sitting there, the phone's blowing up. He's paying no attention to it, Bob Shanks. And then he starts asking me stuff that I think is kind of junk. Are you a Yankees fan or a Mets fan? Do you have brothers and sisters? How long is it? I'm thinking, and finally he says, how do you feel about doing the weather? And Tom, the truth was, I could care less about doing the weather.
And did you say that?
No, at that level, you don't say no. I said, I can do the weather. Sure you can. We'll get your meteorologist. We'll have one audition. Is there something I can ask you that could lead you into your comedy? At that time, I was doing stand-up and radio. I said, ask me where I went on vacation recently. Okay, so I go to a studio, it's packed. He's standing next to a camera. He says, I'm going to ask you some questions, answer to the camera right next to me. Okay, this and that and this and that. Finally, he says, where'd you go on vacation recently? And I say, Jamaica. Everyone in Jamaica has an accent. Where are you from, Mom? Where are you going, Mom? Even the dogs, bark, bark, Mom. And the whole place laughed. Tom, that got me the job.
So being funny, was that a stand-up joke at the time, or?
That's a joke I didn't use anymore.
No, but there you go. I mean, but that's the interesting thing about stand-up. So let's go back to the beginning of Mark McEwen, and then we'll somehow figure out how we both wound up in downtown Orlando on a Friday night together. What's the beginning of it? You went to college.
I didn't graduate. I went to college, and there was a teacher taught a drama at our school, high school. So we came back from college. We're all sitting around the fireplace in his house. Nice guy. He's asking all the people, so what are you doing? What are you doing? So he gets to me. What are you doing? Nothing. Nothing? What do you want to do? I don't know. I said, sometimes when I listen to the radio, the DJ plays a song. The song that's after the song that he played, I wouldn't have played that. He says, do you have a radio station in Maryland? I said, I don't know. He said, find out. I did. I got on the air. And that was how my radio career began.
Okay, so these are the crucial questions I've been trying to put together on the internet, and there's no clear Wikipedia page on you that explains these things. So you started as a radio personality who then started doing stand-up. Fair?
Oh, okay. Backtrack
Yeah,
just
yeah. This is
my
the
hero.
hard part about having a veteran on the show. All my stalking has failed me.
My hero was a guy who's gone hit a bad way. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was what made me want to do stand up. And if you remember, back then you had to be clean because there was only Carson. That was it. Now, Def Comedy Jam, you can say whatever you want. Back then, if you had 20 minutes and 10 more blue, as they called them, you had 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how I began doing stand up. I left school, Maryland, to go to LA. And I told the first joke I ever wrote. I told that night you were on with me, and that was the best I did in a year. On the way, I came home, Tom. I drove home and cried the whole way home.
Oh, wait, were you one of those guys who went out to LA for a week and thought he was going to be famous by the end of the week?
No,
like, how long were you out in LA?
For a year. I was
okay.
I wanted to say 76.
Okay.
Around the 73 or around a long time ago. But I came home, I thought I have to get busy. And that turned into being on the radio. I did stand up, but mainly my gig was on the radio. So by the time I got to New York, I played places like the Comedy Store and the Bitter End and what's the other Upper East Side Comedy Store?
The Strip is up there on the Upper East Side.
Strip.
Or Dangerfields, which closed within the last couple of years.
Never played Dangerfields, but I did see Rodney Dangerfield do stand up at the Comedy Store. He came out, had lines written on an envelope, and he would say them. And if people laughed, if they didn't laugh, he'd go, "You're right, cross them off. Thank you, laugh." I had never seen that before. I was like, Rodney Dangerfield.
You're starting to see a little, but you see that apparently in the cellar. You'll see that now. You'll see a famous person drop in. They're pretty strict with security. You could try a few jokes out and then you leave. That seems to be happening there. But let's keep this focused on you. So you were a radio guy. So you tried stand up for a year, broke your heart. You go back to where, Maryland, to be a DJ again, or New York?
Maryland.
So, and you start hopping around the country. Now, what hours of the day were you on? Because I say this as a man who works in radio and never had a radio show. You know? I find radio DJing to be back then it was glamorous. Now I find it a scary job, but I've been told there's ups and downs, and half the guys wind up drunks or addicts. Was that you were on?
Well, I'll say this, Tom, radio today is different than radio was back then. Listen to Top 40 on the radio. The rock station here plays like 5 groups. That's it, over and over and over. Queen, like they just came out. Queen's been out forever. Okay. But back then, it was what you knew about the music, how you set the songs up, how you set the groups up. So I like that homework, that research I took with me to TV.
So
go ahead.
Were you a pop culture guru type, a music guru growing up?
Tom, I always say I like knowing things. So I'll read things just to, I didn't know that. So when you read that stuff comes out and people riding around in cars go, "Oh, I didn't know that about Robert Plant." So that's how that. So when I got to TV, weather guys did the weather. That's what they did. I was the first guy who said, "Hey, can I interview musicians?" No. And I remember when I first got there, the anchors were more concerned with politicians and prime ministers and all that. And I'm like, is that BB King? So that's how it began.
So I guess we go through the thing. You hop around a bunch of cities, you know music, you know how to tell a joke, and you know how, because of stand-up, to keep it tight. set a punchline. We agree. Those are the skills you got by dumb. And you're telling me dumb ass luck, which I don't know if that's the inspiration I need right now. Get a call to go have what might be the best job on the new early show. Because, right, they had just changed from, you were early show or CBS this morning?
Before the early show was called the morning program. That's what I began with. They canceled that after 10 months. I worked with Bob Saget from Full House. Bob's my boy. He got me backtrack.
Yeah, did you know? That's what I'm going to say. Did you know him from stand-up?
Yes. I did a show called Comedy Tonight with Bill Bonks. He was the host. I was the Ed McMahon, the VP. And so that we'd bring every comedian in. Tom, by the end of the second week, we were like, can you tell a joke? Do you have a joke? Do you have a joke? We were out of jokes. And so when I went to that audition, Bob was sitting there and he said, I think you got this. There's one other guy from Boston, but he has a beard and he's old. I think you got this. Yeah, and he was right.
All right. So here you are. You're a comedian. You're told to do the weather. I have a friend who's an entertainment reporter in Florida, in Florida, and she was talking about transitioning to potentially doing weather. Do you have any advice for someone who does not have a degree in meteorology for doing the weather?
Local TV is different from national TV. If you watch local TV, the weather guys watch their hands. They have a clicker in their hand. That's
right.
How to change the maps and all that. National, I didn't have a clicker. I would touch the map, it would change. I would say in Denver, it would change and all that. But they hired me to be part of that team. But I'll say this, Tom, if you say something funny in a room full of comedians, they smile. Say something funny in a room full of news guys, they fall right on the floor.
So that's what I miss about doing the warm up at Good Morning America. When I was at The View, there were two, like, yeah, Joy and Whoopi, they're comics, they're pros. They would go, funny. The way comedians do.
Right.
The way I would do to them sometimes. But at Good Morning America, I almost felt like with some of the anchors, they laughed almost too much at some of the jokes, and they were too quick to be offended by some of the other, not be offended, but do play offended. Oh, you went there. Oh, and I'm like, no, that was just that was a sandwich joke I've told 500 times. That's not a going there.
Let me ask you this. How did you get on those shows?
Oh, so the story is very, I don't know. It's not, it involves people who have been at Bonkerz. My story is, I started out to speed through the story, NBC Page, because you did the Page Talent Show there. Then I did work at Rosie O'Donnell's show, and I was the writer's assistant there.
How did that happen?
That frankly happened through me being a page, a job being up, and me having known 6 people to put in references for me. I mean, that was the perfect storm of references where, and again, when you talk about me doing this podcast, trying to get back to my magic and where you're planting seeds and you hope they grow, I had 6 references at that point. There was one, Maria Notaris, who was a producer at Conan, who I would see in the hallways when I was a page. And I remembered, great woman, funny woman. And I remembered her lunch order that she always liked a cup of ice from the fast food place, but she would take the free soda from the Conan refrigerator.
Very funny.
Yeah. And honestly, dropping that randomly, I think she said, hey, give me a call one day. Then there was another reference who was, it's blurring a bit, but one of them was Rosie's brother, he was a vice president of sales at NBC for commercial time, Eddie O'Donnell. I actually don't thank him enough. And when I give my public thanks, Mr. O'Donnell, and it's funny, you could call her Rosie, but he was Mr. O'Donnell because those were in those days, the vice president still got a little Mr. or Miss,
right.
At least from whatever rank I felt I was at. Anyway, speed through the story, met Eddie O'Donnell while his department was going to the Rosie show, I worked up in the sales office for a week or two. They tried to hire me for a different job. And again, you talk about God, the prayers God doesn't answer, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get that job because I didn't have enough time left in the Page program. I was kind of in the mood I'm in right now. Like, I don't want to say suicidal for real, but I was ready to put my head in the damn toilet, or what's next? Where am I going? What the hell's going on with my life? That kind of thing. And God bless. I was up for the job giving tours with a friend of mine, Nicole Savini, who would wind up becoming a big shot with Stephen Colbert. And we were each lying to the other while we were interviewing for the same job. It was, hey, could you give the tour from a 10 to 11 and not tell the boss that I'm not on the tour? And she said, yes, but only if you could do that for me at 1 to 2. And we both revealed later we were each interviewing for the same job. And it's weird. I remembered a job interview in that I was at a spot where people were telling me, don't tell people you're doing stand-up before you go on job interviews. I had interviewed at The Daily Show right before that and this was The Daily Show with Kilborn, I think. Yeah, and I think or it was right when Stewart was starting, but whatever it was, I got the interview and literally I lived on Long Island at the time. I literally went and bought a suit from a clothing store that's long since closed. Went on the interview, and then my dad had a friend who was the lighting guy there who asked what I did wrong on the interview, and it was, they're not into hiring comedians right now. They have enough young white guys who think they're comedians, was pretty much what my dad was told. And after knowing who was there, yes, they did. Anyway, the big ending is that was the perfect storm. And then for the warm-up stuff, what happened was I was at a point of quitting comedy. I had a good job in radio, which I still have, but it was a dead-end job. I have a job writing for morning radio shows, which I call the world's best dead-end job. And it is. I've been telecommuting for 23 years, long before it was cool. Now it was harder. It wasn't with a laptop. You needed bigger computers to do things with. You needed VPNs, blah, blah, blah. But do you know Weeki Wachee, Florida?
No.
All you need to know is they have a live mermaid show. And I had seen it while touring Florida working for Bonkerz. And to speed through the story, I was doing a web TV show about me quitting comedy to be a male mermaid in a mermaid show. And that's when a friend of mine, my mentor, Jeanette Barber, who I've had on my podcast many, many times, she told Rosie O'Donnell to put in a reference for me at The View when Rosie was going to The View the first time in 2006 to say, hey, we know you need a warm-up comedian. Tom Kelly's doing stand-up. And I'll give you the longer version of the story just to be fun. I started going back and forth to Bonkerz in Orlando, recharging my energy. Bonkerz was my first road gig in 2001 when I was working at Rosie.
Okay.
And then in 2006, I was going from the West Coast of Florida to Orlando to do any amount of stage time I could get at Bonkerz to get into stand-up shape for my audition at The View.
Okay.
And, and the rest, as they say, is history, which I guess it's funny you say that. That brings me to the other reason why I wanted to do this show was I wanted to get back to a place, that energy of things always happened for me in Orlando, or when I went down to Florida, my energy would recharge and magic would start happening. And so that's part of why when they said Mark McEwen, they're taping a TV show, I didn't ask what network it's on. It's on something called DBTV on your Roku Fire Stick. There's a link on Mimeo that I'll put in a fan group. And then when we went to the show, I mean, it was a bar show. I mean, for lack of a better word, it was a bar show. And I guess that's when we get to your life story is you're a big shot. You lasted at CBS in the morning for 10 years and you had a stroke, right?
Oh, 16 years.
16 years and you had a stroke.
Then I left to come here to do TV for CBS affiliate here. I did that for a year and then I had my stroke.
So I guess that brings me to, I mean, we're way into the show to hit this moment. Or we've set up who you are. I guess this is the moment now. You had everything. And my story is not as tough as yours. But you have that moment. For me, it was COVID. For you, it was an actual medical friggin' problem. You had everything and it was taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Tom, you sit there. What I knew about a stroke before I had one was nothing. Zippity doo dah. So I thought it was like the flu or a cold. You'd be over it in a week or so. Here it is. Gee whiz, 16 years. I'm still feeling effects of the stroke. Mine was bad, Tom. I was in a coma for 2 days, intensive care for a week, hospital for a month, rehab for a year. Bad. Had to learn to walk and talk, and blah blah blah. I'm right-handed. I do everything left-handed because this hand shakes. So I write left-handed. I shave left-handed. I brush my teeth left-handed. It's a world different. I'm kind of used to it, but it's different than it was.
So you were you married at the time?
Yes,
Okay. And are we still married?
yes.
Okay. Did you have money in the bank? I mean, this sounds stupid, but these are all my fears as a single entertainer.
I did. I don't need anymore.
No. And so you had enough money to start coasting at the time or to get through it.
I did. But Tom, I'll be honest, I didn't know it would last like forever. I
Yeah.
thought
No, I'm with you.
I've been back on TV. That to me is wonderful. Uh, um, I give speeches. I speak around the country, and that's where stand up comes in handy because when you speak, if you speak all about stroke, I call stroke a furrowed brow kind of thing. If
Yeah.
it's all, you can be a pitcher and throw 100 miles an hour. If that's all you throw, they'll eventually hit you because they will. Okay, so what you do when you speak about strokes, I go back and forth. I tell them something that's serious, then make them laugh. Tell them something serious, then make them laugh. So now you have the audience leaning forward because they think they might miss something. Tom, I've done a TED talk. That same kind of way to do things is in that talk. That was done in New York on Broadway in front of in a theater with 500 people. Tom, I couldn't tell you who they were if they walked in right now. You know, when you're on stage, you tend to there's an audience, but you're trying to remember your routine.
Yeah.
You're trying to remember an ad libs are part of it, but you have a routine. Same with a speech.
So, I mean, so I guess here's my question for you. If this show secretly in its heart is about comebacks, you're knocked down on your ass for a year.
Right.
You're in your fancy den in your nice Orlando or Florida area home without giving out your exact address. What does your emotional comeback look like, if not your career comeback? How do you stay so positive and nice? How are you not cursing God every day? I mean, like, like you're such a kind and positive man. I didn't know about the trials and tribulations you faced until, frankly, 30 minutes into knowing you.
Tell me, Tom, I credit my parents. They put no give up in this thought. I'm like, okay, uh, all I know is to go forward, try to make things go forward, try to make things work. Tom, okay, if I had a stroke before TV, altogether be different. But Tom, I'm sitting there looking at the wall. There's Travolta, Hillary, Bill Clinton, Whoopi, Bruce Springsteen, Garth Brooks, Wayne Gretzky, George H.W. Bush, Denzel. I met them all, interviewed them all. So afterwards, I was like, I've been there, done that. So let's see what the present and future has in store. That's where the don't give up comes from.
So after that year, you started giving speeches about stroke awareness.
Right. Yeah. And I wrote a book.
Okay. I guess the question for you is, what advice do you have to somebody or for somebody who had their proverbial stroke, their huge setback, and they have to start over again? Now, there's also part of you, you have that picture of, you have the wall of famous people. You may not be going to that again. Are you trying to go back to that again?
No, no. But Tom, I'm in the process of hopefully, publishing my second book. My second book is all about these people and stories about when I interviewed them. Again, people love. My producer said people love to read about celebrities. You should do that. Okay, I got them all. My advice is to someone who's had the stroke or proverbial put down, I say, when life knocks you down, you don't have to get up and get back in the fray. What you have to do is just get back up and don't give up. That's hard. But, Tom, we're here for a finite amount of time. You can sit in your underwear and woe is me, or you can put your fists up and fight back. I choose to put my fists up and fight back.
I think that's the bow I need on the show, my friend. Mark McEwen, you're my lucky charm. And frankly, this month, you're my inspiration. Is it fair to say to see you starting over in a spot where I was starting over? That's not insulting, right?
No, that's true.
To see a man of your accomplishments starting over with me in the same spot I started at and have started over at and am starting over at again gives me a little bit of hope. And I appreciate you, sir. Your book, Change of the Weather. Is there anything else we want you to find you on Instagram? Any of those things?
Change in the weather.
In the weather, damn it. I need reading glasses. We're at that point.
We all do.
Gosh darn it. I was right there. And there it is. It says in right there.
If you do IamMarkMcEwen.com, my blog will come up. If you do MarkMcEwen.com, the whole website comes up.
All right, there you go. All right, folks, listen, comment where you can comment, share if you can share this. Maybe, hey, listen, go annoy that Brian Gumble guy. Tell him we're doing good here. Folks.
Do that for me.
Do that for Mark. Tell Brian to give Mark and I a call. And until next time, good night, Orlando.